If you are passionate about understanding how your body works and the science behind a healthier life, subscribe now. Here you will learn something new in every video. We analyze 4 fasting durations: 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, and 36 hours. This is the direct truth. 12 hours are practically neutral. 16 hours is the point where most people get stuck. But upon reaching 24 hours, growth hormone can increase by up to 2,000%. Today we are going to break down what really happens inside your organism when you fast. Step by step, you will understand why your body suddenly stops burning fat, why it starts conserving it, and why so many people get completely blocked, even fasting every day. And most importantly, I will teach you a simple strategy called the pulse method, designed to keep your metabolism active, your energy high, and prevent your body from entering survival mode. To understand why metabolism slows down, we must review the most well-known starvation experiment in history. In 1944, researcher Ancel Keys conducted the Minnesota starvation experiment. He selected healthy men and reduced their caloric intake by approximately 50%. This is a level of restriction that some people can reach without realizing it when they fast all day and then eat very little. This is what happened. Not only did they lose weight, their bodies reacted defensively. Their basal metabolic rate, the energy they burned simply to stay alive, fell by nearly 40%. Their body temperature dropped. Their heart rate was reduced. They became apathetic and lacked energy. Their organisms basically interpreted that fuel was scarce, so spending had to be reduced to survive. That is the main mechanism we fight against. To understand how to avoid it, we need to observe how different fasting durations influence the burning speed. Let's start with the 12-hour neutral zone. The 12-hour fast is what many people do without intending to. You have dinner at 8 at night and breakfast at 8 in the morning. From a metabolic point of view, it is considered practically neutral. A study from the University of Alabama analyzed early time-restricted feeding and found that although fasting for 12 hours is better than eating for 15 hours straight, it does not cause significant fat oxidation. The reason? The liver functions as an energy reservoir in the form of glycogen. Depending on how many carbohydrates you consumed the previous day, it can store enough fuel to keep your body running for between 12 and 18 hours without a problem. When you reach hour 12, you haven't even started burning body fat yet. You are only using hepatic reserves. It's like driving with the main tank full. You haven't turned to the emergency canister yet. Therefore, physiologically, the 12-hour fast is a good base, but for aggressive fat loss, it is practically irrelevant. Now we move to the 16-hour plateau, the famous 16 to 8 protocol. Here you fast for 16 hours and eat within an 8-hour window. For many people, it works until it stops working. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine analyzed this method for 12 weeks and found something surprising. The group that fasted 16 hours a day did not lose more weight than the group that ate in a distributed manner throughout the day. Additionally, the fasting participants lost a considerable amount of lean muscle mass. Why does this happen? Because of adaptive thermogenesis. When you repeat the same 16-hour pattern daily, your body adapts and interprets it as the new normal. It anticipates that period without food. Just like in the Keys experiment, the organism reduces energy expenditure as if it were lowering the intensity of the lights to save fuel. The organism perceives that you are restricting available energy, so it adjusts its systems. It slightly decreases the heart rate and reduces body temperature to ensure that this 16-hour period does not compromise survival. From your perspective, you feel like you are making an effort, but your physiology compensates for that effort to maintain balance. It's like running on a treadmill that slows down at exactly the same rate you move forward. The 24-hour turning point. This is where physiology becomes truly interesting. By passing the 16-hour barrier and approaching 24, the body enters a state of alert that paradoxically works in your favor. Researchers at Intermountain Health studied people performing 24-hour water fasts and observed a notable increase in human growth hormone, HGH, up to 2,000% in men and around 1,300% in women. The reason this matters for fat loss: HGH protects muscle tissue. It basically tells the body to preserve muscle and use fat as fuel. Upon reaching 24 hours, hepatic glycogen reserves are practically exhausted, so the organism must turn to adipose reserves. Since this type of fast is not usually repeated daily, the body interprets it as a temporary situation and responds by raising energy to facilitate the search for food. At this point, weight loss can accelerate without a drastic drop in metabolism occurring. However, to make the most of this effect, the feeding window must be managed with as much precision as the fast. The caloric window. It is not enough to fast and then eat without control. Much of the stress associated with diets comes from the mental burden of logging food. Observing every plate, calculating portions, and noting grams generates friction and ends up hindering adherence. For this reason, many people turn to tools like logging applications that simplify the process to maintain consistency without increasing anxiety, always checking details like oils or hidden ingredients that can go unnoticed. The 36-hour protocol. Scientific evidence also points to the 36-hour window, known as a full day plus 2 nights. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism analyzed alternate day fasting. Generally 36 hours of fasting followed by 12 hours of feeding, and found striking results even when participants ate freely on their intake days. A significant reduction in abdominal fat and an improvement in the ratio of fat lost versus muscle mass were observed. This period seems to represent a biological sweet spot. It is long enough to completely empty glycogen and force the body to depend on ketones for a longer time, but not so prolonged as to activate the starvation response typical of fasts of 72 hours or more. During a 36-hour fast, the organism releases a set of catecholamines, such as adrenaline and norepinephrine, into the bloodstream, which favors energy mobilization and maintains the state of physiological alertness. These hormones do not just increase your alertness, they act as keys that open fat reserves. They move toward the most resistant adipose deposits and bind to their receptors, ordering that fat to be released to be used as fuel. With a 12-hour fast, you are basically consuming what you have in the pantry. With 24 hours, it's as if you open the refrigerator, and when you reach 36 hours, you are finally accessing the deep freezer in the garage. The trap of constant fasting. There is, however, an error that many people do not consider. It is not viable to chain 36-hour fasts indefinitely. This brings us back to the risk observed in Ansel Keys' hunger experiment. If you fast too frequently without adequate refeeding, the organism interprets that it lives in permanent scarcity and enters chronic caloric restriction. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed individuals with a 25% calorie deficit. In just 3 weeks, their resting metabolism fell by more than 200 calories daily. Here the paradox of fasting appears. It is a stressor. In brief and intense doses, it can strengthen metabolism and favor fat loss. In prolonged and continuous exposures, it can weaken the system and make it slower. Imagine it is like weight training. If you train for an hour, the muscle adapts and grows. But if you tried to lift weights for 24 hours straight, the tissue would end up wearing out. Fasting works as metabolic training. You need the stimulus, the period without eating, but also the recovery, the feeding phase. How to apply the science? If 12 hours are insufficient, 16 hours usually lead to stagnation, and 36 hours are powerful for mobilizing fat. The question is, how to use it without collapsing the metabolism? The answer is the pulse protocol. Instead of repeating the same routine every day, you create a variable pattern that prevents the body from adapting and reducing its energy expenditure. Based on metabolism research and clinical data from Intermountain Health, this approach seeks to lose fat while keeping the metabolism active. 1. 5-to-2 strategy. Instead of fasting 16 hours daily, eat normally 5 days a week and perform 2 non-consecutive fasts of between 24 and 36 hours. This keeps growth hormone and energy expenditure elevated because the organism does not perceive continuous scarcity, only a couple of days with less food availability. 2. 16-to-8 reset. If you already practice 16-to-8 and have plateaued, it means your metabolic thermostat has adjusted. To break that adaptation, take 2 days a week without fasting. Have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That increase in calories sends a safety signal to the thyroid, indicating that it can raise energy expenditure. Upon returning to fasting, the body responds by burning energy more easily. 3. The 36-hour sprint. If you have persistent fat areas, use the 36-hour fast as a specific stimulus, approximately once every 2 weeks. This period reduces insulin to basal levels and allows adrenaline to mobilize fat in areas with less blood flow, such as hips or the lower back. Why does this method work? The reason pulse protocols usually outperform traditional dieting is their effect on adiponectin. This hormone produced by fat cells increases insulin sensitivity and favors the organism using fat as fuel. Research shows that longer intermittent fasts of 24 to 36 hours significantly raise adiponectin levels, creating a more favorable metabolic environment for fat mobilization. When you perform a short 12-hour fast, adiponectin levels practically do not change. If you maintain a chronic 16-to-8 fast for long periods like a year, that adiponectin can even be reduced because the organism enters energy-saving mode. In contrast with a 36-hour fast, adiponectin rises. It is as if a clear and uniform signal were sent to the entire body. In the end, the human organism is an extraordinary machine of adaptation. If you perceive it as an adversary, it will respond with more hunger, fatigue, and a slower metabolism. But when you understand these windows, when you understand that the 36-hour fast is the key to accessing deep reserves and that 12 hours only equate to tidying the surface, you stop acting on intuition. You stop feeling guilt for eating on non-fasting days. Do you understand that those days are precisely what allow the fasting days to work? It is no longer solely about ingesting less food. It is about modifying your internal biochemistry. You go from being a sugar-dependent organism, constantly hungry and with low energy, to one that uses stored fat as its own fuel. The evidence is clear. Consistency does not imply repeating exactly the same thing every day. Consistency means maintaining a pattern. When you manage to master the rhythm of 24 and 36-hour fasts, you discover that fat loss does not depend so much on willpower, but on time and strategy. The moment you find that rhythm, your metabolism stops opposing you. It begins to collaborate with you because that is how it is designed to function. It is an elegant system created to adapt and resist. Fasting is one of the most powerful tools for modifying body composition. But like any powerful tool, it requires precision. Abandon the routine that leads to the metabolic decline described by Ancel Keys and begin to apply the pulse method to activate your most efficient version in fat burning. Your body already possesses that knowledge. It is encoded in your biology for millions of years. You only need to provide it with the appropriate signal. If this analysis of fasting windows has changed the way you view your body's potential, subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are uncovering the biological history that has been overlooked for too long. Plant the seeds for your future health. The next treasure of knowledge will be revealed soon.